Hello, and thanks for joining us for the Beyond Biotech podcast number 2. Perhaps I should have said hola because this podcast is dedicated to Spain. I'm Jim Cornell from Labiotech, and I should say, while I know the word hola and a few other words gleaned from many press trips and shows in the beautiful country of Spain, it isn't a language that I can speak. When I'm there, I do pick a few things up, but they soon get forgotten. Most of them relate to ordering food. I did learn a few words related to football or soccer, as I was a referee for quite some time, and one or two words helped when the teams spoke Spanish. And when I played in a band in Canada, we did used to do Feliz Navidad in our set list at Christmas. Quite badly, I imagine. But the reason behind this podcast being about Spain is that, as you may be aware, I've only been at Labiotech for just over a month, so the Spanish Association for Biotech Companies, Asabys, kindly put on a webinar to explain a little more about the biotech industry in Spain, so I did a few interviews based around that. It was a really wonderful webinar, and they went to an awful lot of trouble to gather companies from all over the country, so it's clear that there's a very vibrant industry there. We've also decided that we're going to try and put the podcast on YouTube with some visuals, and as I've been to Spain a few times, I had to look for images that I'd taken while I was there. Sadly, even though I've been taking photos professionally since my teens, my filing system isn't so good. I think probably they're all under P for photo, so it was a pretty big challenge. One of our team, while actually from France originally, lives in Spain, and it's been pretty hot there over the past week. Anyway, my colleague was posting photographs of the crowded beaches, which tends not to happen in Scotland, but here in Scotland the temperatures did rise a little bit here, and it's amazing how quickly the body adjusts. The low 20s or 70s Fahrenheit felt pretty hot. In the US Southwest, that's winter jacket temperatures. It was a busy week for podcast interviews, other than for this episode, and something weird did happen, and it wasn't related to the technical glitches that I experienced last week, which are still continuing, but not quite as badly as they were before. I'm in a small village, so it's generally quiet, other than the occasional tractor or the sound of an annoyed cow. But this week there is construction going on with lots of road repairs, so a lot of noise outside the house. But crazily, every time I did a recording, the noise stopped. So either they knew what I was doing or they take a lot of breaks. Still, their timing was appreciated. I'm not exactly sure where the time is going, but we're now past the longest day of the year here in the Northern Hemisphere, and next week here in Scotland, school is over for another year. So my days are about to consist of making peanut butter sandwiches, enduring YouTube videos about Lego and maps, and hearing the words, "I'm bored." But I'm not bored, as biotech is very busy, and in a moment we will run through some of the news we have carried on the website that you may have missed for one reason or another. It's okay, we're not mad about it. You can get into our good books with the simple visit to Labiotech.eu. So let me first tell you who our guests are, and as I mentioned, it's all about Spain this week. I mentioned Asabys being the organization that covers all of the biotech industry for Spain, and we talked to the CEO, John Arocena. We also had a chat with Clara Campàs at Asabys, and we had a conversation with Susana Sánchez Gómez at MOA Food Tech. So now let's have a quick look at some of the articles from the past 7 days at Labiotech.eu. Scancell is set to produce and clinically validate T-cell redirecting specific antibodies. Crystal Biotech is looking for FDA approval for its dystrophic epidermolysis bullosa treatment. And we had an in-depth article on the biggest Asia-Pacific biotech investments in May. Brim Biotechnology in Taiwan has entered OTC trading. A Shanghai biotech company in China has secured $80 million to advance its product pipeline, and Rock4 Therapeutics has bought a UK biotech company. There was an article on progress on a Lyme disease vaccine. A US Polytechnic Institute has developed face masks that fight viruses, and more on that on the podcast in a couple of weeks. Carbon Biosciences has launched with $38 million in funding to tackle, among other things, cystic fibrosis. Galapagos is acquiring CellPoint and Abound Bio, and we had a deeper dive into the top psychedelic drug developers. Ellipta has raised $21 million to develop an early detection test for all cancers. Biotalis has partnered with Novozymes to work on a biofungicide, and a new agreement could lead to the first African-owned COVID vaccine. An Australian university has developed a new 3D printing solution for stem cell manufacturing, and you can read all of those and many more at Labiotech.eu. Of course, you may be listening to this podcast at Labiotech.eu, but it is also available on lots of different podcast providing apps and sites, some of which I've actually heard of. As I mentioned last time, we're happy to hear your suggestions for guests. Maybe we will even do another country feature sometime soon, and maybe I'll go and do it in person, depending on where it is, I guess. One thing I should mention is that this week on the website we added our editorial calendar, so feel free to check that out as well, because you might be able to make a contribution to the content. You never know. I think there are some pretty interesting subjects that hopefully will cover everyone, and we'll be increasing the number of newsletters that we send out every week soon as well. And so it is time for our first guest. And I think the way that we'll approach this is to set the scene first and look at the big picture by first talking to the Spanish Bioindustry Association, Asabys. The biotech scene in Spain has really grown, and the association is expanding right along with it. To tell us what Asabys is and what it does, and all about the Spanish biotech industry, is the organization's CEO, John Arocena.
Asabys is the trade organization that represents the Spanish biotech ecosystem. We gather close to 300 members. Most of them are private companies, but we also have some research centers, scientific parks, universities, professional associations, and also some foundations. About 85% of our corporate memberships are small and medium enterprises. Our members carry out their activities in different sectors. Some develop products for healthcare, for human healthcare, others for agriculture, others produce raw materials that pretend to substitute products of petrochemical origin.
And are there within Spain hubs of biotech, or is it just concentrated in one or two cities?
There are some hubs. Most of the industry is concentrated around Madrid and also Barcelona. Barcelona is the first hub, Madrid will go second. And also we have other hubs in Andalusia and also in the northern part of Spain, around the Basque Country and also Navarre. Those are the main hubs in Spain, but it's also true that the industry is quite distributed through the different territories and biotech companies in every single region of Spain.
And you mentioned all of the different hundreds of companies that are members of your organization. What do you do for those members?
What we do is we work to position innovation as a driver of the competitiveness of Spain, and we try to foster the development of the biotech ecosystem in Spain. How do we do that? We work to achieve an optimal legal, political and economic environment and framework for our industry to develop. And also through our activities, we catalyze the innovation opportunities that the industry offers. We also organize conferences such as BioSpain, that in 2023 will be held in Barcelona. BioSpain is the leading Spanish biotech event, one of the leading events in Europe. It brings together more than 850 innovative organizations and more than 1,500 professionals from 30 countries attended this event in its last edition. So what we expect in this 2023 event is that we'll increase the number of one-to-one meetings that were held in the last edition to over 3,500 meetings. So it's a 3-day event which pretends to promote innovation, investment, collaboration, and new business opportunities.
What's the current state of the biotech industry in Spain? It seems to be kind of booming.
Yeah, when Asabys was born, that was 22 years ago, there were only 50 biotech companies in Spain. The industry has grown significantly to over 800 companies. That's a quite aggressive growth. And we have also been able to mature that ecosystem with some already medium-sized companies that also exist in Spain. The joint economic impact of the companies grew close to 0.8% of the Spanish GDP, and they created close to 120,000 jobs, which is 0.6% of the total employment of Spain. One of the key developments to make this possible was the capacity Spain has shown to become a scientific publication powerhouse, ranking 8th globally in biotech. And the science being produced is good both in terms of volume and also of quality. And that's the basement on which our industry is being able to grow. Private investment has also grown significantly. In 2020, private investment increased almost 50% compared to 2019. And in 2021, it has grown 20% additionally, attracting over 180 million euros, which according to Spanish standards are really good numbers because we were coming from around an average of 100 million per year in 2017, 18, and 19.
And is the Spanish biotech industry well recognized globally?
It was not well recognized worldwide, but that has slowly started to change. We have seen since 2014 when a Spanish company, which is called Horizon, reached a licensing agreement with Roche, with the Swiss multinational Roche, for 15 million euro upfront. And I think that it was 6 months after that, another Spanish company, which is called Palo Biopharma, also reached another licensing agreement with Novartis for another 15 million upfront. I think that those two deals were key for international big corporations, big pharma corporations, and also for international investors to start to look into our industry. And what we have seen in the last 3-4 years is that around 100 million euros are being raised. That was in 2020 and 2021 in deals where at least an international investor is present. And when I say an international investor, it can be from an international VC company to an international corporate VC company or international pharma, which is investing hand in hand with Spanish venture capital investors. So what we are seeing is an increase in the interest of international investors and international corporations in the Spanish biotech, and that's really clear to us.
Do you also cover things like food biotech? I know there's companies like Eatable Adventures that are doing a lot in that space.
Yeah, we do indeed. In the end, we always say that the biotech industry is working in the main global challenges society faces, and one of them is, of course, the green transition and also food safety, which is key, which is showing to be critical in the current global scene. And from that point of view, of course, we have biotech companies which are working in developing new nutritional ingredients, probiotics, prebiotics, sustainable meat, protein, plant-based proteins, cultivated meat. We have a little bit of everything. And it's clear to us that biotech is going to be key to tackle the challenges the food industry is going to face in the following years, which are linked to sustainability and to being able to produce enough food for an ever-growing demand, and especially more quality, where we clearly see that there is a trend in which protein consumption is being increased worldwide. And the current food system is not going to be able to produce that sustainably unless we rely on technology, and especially on biotechnology.
Next, we'll move to a Spanish venture capital company, Asabys, to find out about their strategies and investments in the biotech sector with Clara Campàs, managing partner and co-founder of the company.
So Asabys is a venture capital firm based in Barcelona, and that was born at the end of 2018. So we invest across the board in life science innovation, which means that we do biotech, biopharma, but also health tech, meaning for us medtech and digital. We don't do everything in medtech and digital, just implantable medtech hardware and software that has a kind of a therapeutic angle, right? And we do also a biotech, biopharma in a quite broad aspect. So we invest mostly in Europe. So we consider ourselves a pan-European investor, but of course we have a particular focus in Spain where we do have a bit more, let's say, access to privileged deal flow, although there are other regions and territories within Europe where we also have hubs or friends or people just commuting there. Our first fund was launched, as I was saying, at the very end of 2018, and it is we have 120 million euros under management. We invested with this fund in 12 companies, and one of them is already exited, and we are currently working in our second fund. We invest in companies that are quite young. So in fact, we did 3 company creation out of the 12 companies in our portfolio in this first fund. But we can also invest occasionally in a bit more mature. So I would say that our sweet spot is Series A, or Series C, Series A, but we can go even earlier and start working in projects that are not companies yet. And we can time to time invest in a bit more company matures in Series B, C, D, or whatever. And as I was saying, investing mostly in Europe, occasionally also in Israel, Switzerland, or other territories.
Is the help that you give just financial, or are there other things that you help with as well?
No, I mean, I think that the era where VCs just bring capital, it's over or will be over soon. And I think that's not bad news, really. We are very proactive investors in that setting. We try to be proactive in a way that we can help companies and we can help entrepreneurs. So it's different when you start with a project that's not even a company. Sometimes we need to have interim management roles to make sure that everything is put together. We can also lead fundraising. We can attract talent and participate in the hiring of the management team, which sometimes are even co-founders of the company at the end. And in companies that are a bit more mature, where there is already a syndicate of investors, we have positions in the board also, and then we also have tried to help those companies in other ways, just giving them access to our network, or time to time also being part of the recruitment committees and remuneration committees and things like that, right? So just to give you 2 examples, very recently we participated in the hiring of a CMO of one of the companies, so someone that we hired in the US from a big pharma, one of the top 5 big pharmas that now will become the CMO of one of our portfolio companies, not announced yet. And in the site of company creation, for example, in MOA Therapeutics, which is a company that we helped creating last summer, 2021. Now we have recruited a CEO, Judith Anido, which is a serial entrepreneur. She had already gone through the cycle of founding a company, fundraising international, including US capital, and then just exiting the company. And we helped hiring her. In fact, we proposed, and finally she has become not only the CEO of the company and a board member, but also a co-founder of the company, despite she entered a bit later. We are 7 people at Asabys, and it's important to say that there is always at least 2 people from the team working in each company. So there are always 2 people designated in a way that we can, so a bit more financial profiles combined with technical or scientific profiles so that we can help in different ways.
What's your take on the Spanish biotech sector at the moment?
So I think that Spain has and have been having for the last years like 3 pillars to have a good biotech sector. One is very nice and very good research, basic research in universities, in academic research, also in the hospital setting. Second pillar is healthcare system. So there are big hospitals in the big cities of Spain, including Barcelona, of course. In fact, these hospitals have been also chosen by big pharmas and big biotechs to become their centers for clinical trials worldwide. So there is not only the center and the tools, but also the teams of clinicians that are used to work in very professionalized and global clinical trials. And the third pillar is talent, which somehow is one of the questions we receive. Do you have enough talent in Spain? I mean, there's talent, and there's still a lack of talent that we cover by recruiting talent from outside, but it's a good place to come and work, right? And particularly now after COVID, where you can work from almost everywhere in the world. I think that with this good science, the healthcare system and big hospitals and the talent that is already there and that we can recruit with not that much effort, I think that's important. What was missing in Spain was private capital, that's clear. There was not enough private capital that was able to work at risk to create value. And that has been changing. So since 2008, where the first venture capital firm specialized in the field, Posicio Capital, was born, and then others have been just playing a role there also, including Asabys, but many others that have been funded and grown in the last 5 years. And most importantly, what we have been seeing in the last 5 years, more or less, it's also capital from abroad landing in Spain, right? So we've seen other VCs, even US-based VCs, investing in Spanish-based biotech companies. We have seen corporate VCs investing in biotech companies in Spain. And let me give you just some examples, right? So one of our biotech companies, Splice Bio, at the very beginning of this year, announced the Series A of $50 million. And it included Novartis Venture Fund, it included NEA. So if I'm not wrong, NEA had already invested outside the US, but that was in Europe, mostly in France. I think that they did 2 companies in France before investing in their third company in Europe, which was Splice Bio in Barcelona. So I think that that's something that was not there 15 years ago, 10 years ago, but that's there. But also you can find like Merck, the pharma, doing a joint venture with Inbrain Neuroelectronics, one of our portfolio companies, of deep brain stimulation for treatment of several neurological diseases. And these type of things were not as usual as they are now in Spain, right? So I think that's a recognition, and that's what happens when you do things properly, when you have good science, when you are able to recruit this talent, then additional capital, even if it comes from outside Europe, is landing here, and corporates too.
That's good. It seems like it's going in the right direction. Is the Spanish government very supportive of the biotech industry?
It is. I think that in Europe, it's not only about Spanish government. I think that you can find some funds coming. I mean, Spanish government sometimes is the way to deliver those additional funds. Our biotech companies receive funding both, and even the VC funds receive funding both from the Spanish government through Fondico and other initiatives, and also from Europe, straightforward from the European Investment Fund, which is one of our strongest LPs at Asabys. And there are some initiatives that have really helped creating value. One of them that comes from the Spanish government, but is a mixture of money coming from Spain and Europe, is Invierte. This is a tool where some of the VCs that have already been approved by the co-investment tool, you can present your biotech projects there. And if you pass the appropriate due diligence by the Invierte, they can bring a ticket that is 50 to 90% of what the VC puts in the Spanish company. And that's really helpful, because one of the things that we have been leaving is the fact that some of the VCs here did not have huge funds. With the trend that we have of having bigger and bigger rounds, it was very good to make our tickets a bit stronger in that setting. Not only by making our funds bigger, which is something that already happened with some tools, but also trying to put together these side tickets to strengthen even more the funding we can bring into these Spanish biotechs. And that's Invierte, in my view, is an amazing tool that has really helped creating value and dimension the biotech sector in Spain.
And as far as that biotech sector is concerned, has that led to it being fragmented all over the country, or are there hubs where biotech is important?
I mean, Barcelona is still the hub with most of the companies here, but you can find good biotech companies everywhere. And even if the headquarters are in Barcelona, then you can find people working here and there, even outside Spain, right? So you can find also good biotech companies in Galicia. But Galicia is most probably just focusing. I mean, they have many things there in their life sciences, but nanotechnology and also small molecule development and design is part of their strengths. So in Galicia, then you have in Madrid some interesting biotechs, and also in the Basque Country and other places in the north. As a main hub, I would say Barcelona is the most complete hub, with many therapeutic areas being covered there.
And are there any exciting developments that you've seen in biotech in Spain recently?
Yeah, I mean, we receive an amazing amount of deal flow every week. Half of it comes from Spain, which means that we are receiving 4 to 5 investment opportunities from Spain per week, which is not bad. So the amount of things that are growing, it's one of the trends I really like, because the quality of those opportunities is also good, which I think is important. As a trend, oncology is still very strong. So we receive very good opportunities. There are amazing research groups all across the country in the oncology field with different approaches, from small molecules to cell therapy. I think that's the big broad. The medical setting and the healthcare system for oncology is very strong with very good professionals. I think that's probably the reason why there is a lot of oncology and good projects there. Then there's a second trend, which is gene editing, gene therapy, and RNA technologies. I think that's not particular for Spain. That's a bit everywhere, but there's also good research groups and things coming here. And still, a small molecule design and development, which is very useful for certain indications and quite straightforward to the market compared to other modalities. For small molecules, there's still the background of the pharma industry and the professionals we're here that are doing very amazing things. And not within biotech, but probably very close related to it very soon, is the digital field. So the other thing that is really blooming is the digital field. And there is a trend, which is the fact that we see now serial entrepreneurs in Spain. We're starting to see those people that have already put together and funded their companies, fundraised internationally, and then now they are considering just to participate or co-founding or founding additional companies. And that's one of the signs also of the starting maturity curve of that. But the main challenge is still growth. So you have very small biotechs here and there. And Spain, as in many other places in Europe, the next challenge would be to do bigger companies that have capital, talent, and size enough to just go through their own development pathways and become big biotechs, right? We need more Ablings and companies like that in Europe, and Spain is not an exception in that setting.
And you mentioned earlier about how many companies there are and also how many opportunities there are. How do you as a company decide where you're going to invest?
I mean, we are really driven about the science and the technology. Sometimes all the VC says that the team is a key factor. I mean, for me, the scientific team is a key factor, but the management team in particular, because we do company creation. So it's very important that you have a very good management team, but it can be built. It can only be built on a strong science and technology that has already shown, or that has a clear pathway on how to show clear proof of concepts that targets an unmet medical need that is really disruptive. So incremental innovation is not for us, probably not for venture capital in general, but for sure not for Asabys. So we really need to go to projects and ideas that really want to do things differently and that understand how the world will be in 15, 10 years from now, and that try to see themselves and see how to apply and how to scale this technology in that setting, right? How to put those products into clinical development. There's a need to understand how technology will play a role and to show that very early that you can play a role in the setting where the technology will be put in the market in the future.
How do you see the biotech field in Spain in 5-10 years?
The trend of having more foreign capital landing here and foreign talent landing here and a crosstalk between our biotechs with other more global biotechs is here to stay, hopefully, and we will fight hard and just work for that to consolidate. Growth will be definitely a driver. We need to make those companies growth, even if the company is not anymore with headquarters in Spain, but is part of a big European corporation. I think that needs to be also considered. What needs to make sure is that we retain talent and there are activities and R&D activities that are here if the headquarters are here. More companies, but hopefully bigger companies, talent that is entrepreneur and serial entrepreneur, people that have become good CEOs in a company that then become good CEOs in another company. So it's not only about entrepreneurs, it's also about the talent that remains in the sector and that is able to go and work 5 years, US-based company, and then come here, right? So that the same thing we say sometimes for R&D academics, which is that they go to do the postdoc in the US, but then we need to bring them back to our academia in Spain. So the same thing should happen with biotech talent in the industry, right? So mobility of this talent and crosstalk between those talent hubs. All the things that we have been working in now and that we will continue being working, creating these companies, in making them grow, in making them companies that are well funded in terms of the amount of capital, but also who is in the syndicate of those companies, these technologies will have stronger steps into the clinical development and potentially into the market. So I think that it will be time to see some good success stories, and these success stories should be increasing the speed at how the Spanish biotech sector evolves also and consolidates.
And now we will have a conversation with MOA Foodtech CSO and founder, Susana Sánchez Gómez.
So we are a MOA Food Tech. It's a food tech company, and what we do is to offer like a sustainable way for the agri-food industry. We develop new ingredients with an added nutritional value, and for this we use different byproducts from the food agro industry, and through a fermentation process and an artificial intelligence tool, we obtain this ingredient. So it's like we take these byproducts, and through the fermentation, we obtain this high protein content ingredient, and we include again in the food industry, promoting this circular economy.
And so what kind of end products would the products that you're making end up in?
Our final products, now we are focused in alternative protein because maybe, as you know, we are like facing several challenges with the food industry because of the environmental impact, and also because the population is going to grow a lot in 2050. So we need like new ingredients and new ways to provide protein to feed the society. So this ingredient, it's like an ingredient with a high percentage of protein, between 40 and 60% of protein, but also it contains other like nutritional interesting components such as beta-glucans or vitamins, fatty acids, omega-3 and 6 that are very good also for the health. So it's a very complete ingredient. We are a B2B company, so we sell this ingredient to other companies that include this ingredient in their food matrices. For example, meat analogs, dairy analogs, or snacks.
So I guess you already mentioned the fact that there's the environmental aspect and also needing to feed more people. I guess it also addresses things like food waste.
Yes, also because, our main objective was to establish an ingredient that was not only nutritional, but also sustainable. So our ingredient, besides this nutritional good profile, has a very, very low impact in the environment because we use those byproducts from the food agro industry that normally they throw and can contaminate, or even they give to the animals to feed them, and they don't have an added value. And we use it in order to elaborate this great ingredient, they say. And also, it's not only this, because also if we, for example, compare with other proteins, for example, the one made from the beef, we consume 98% less of water, we use 98% less of land, and we have like 85 less of CO2 emissions.
And where do you source the raw ingredients from?
Our first ingredient that we are using are derived from the sugar industry, but we are using others, for example, some from cereals. We have a project with Barilla, one of the most important company of pasta. Also, we are using other different vegetables byproducts, because our final product is a vegan, so you can use like in meat or dairy analogs. So all the byproducts that we are using are from vegetables.
So they're vegan, but they can be used in dairy and meat alternatives?
Yes. This is one of our first idea, but it's true that the people now, there are a lot of people that maybe they are not vegan or they are flexitarian. They are very worried also about sustainability, and they wanted to reduce some ingredients derived from animals. So they are also like a potential consumer of this ingredient.
And how cost effective is it to be able to produce this food from waste, or these ingredients from waste?
That's a good point. We are working on that. We have scaled up the process up to 3,000 liters of a bioreactor, and it's an economics scale. Once we get bigger scale, we will be cheaper. What we wanted is to be a cost-effective ingredient, a cheap ingredient, because we wanted to have like a clear impact on the environment. So the most people consume it, the less impact to the environment. So we are trying to get a cheap ingredient.
Is it precision fermentation that you're using in this process?
No, it's more biomass fermentation. What we obtain is the microorganism, that is the one that is the ingredient. It's true that since we are using an artificial intelligence tool that we are developing, we can like modify what kind of ingredients or components can be in a higher concentration in the ingredient. For example, we wanted 40 and between 40 and 60% of protein, but there are some companies that they want more fiber. So with this computational tool, we can know which parameters we can modify and obtain an ingredient with a higher fiber. So it's a biomass fermentation, but it's true that it can be like a mix between precision fermentation because we potentiate to enhance some component.
What stage are you at with production, and what do you see as being the next goals in the short term and the long term for the company?
We are pretty young. We set up the company in September of 2020. And since then, we have been focused in developing this ingredient with this high value, nutritional value, talking also with some potential customer to contrast with them all the potential of this ingredient. And right now we are like in a moment that we are going to try to industrialize the process. We have a scale up the process, and now we are talking with different companies from the agro-food industry to get some partnership in order to produce this ingredient. Hopefully, maybe at the first part of the next year, we can be on the market. We have checked the regulatory because sometimes the problem with this kind of ingredient that are very new, it's the regulatory part. And in Europe, they are like, it's a bit tricky, but we have finally checked that our ingredient is not novel food, so it can be directly go to the market.
Okay, that's great. Is there anything else that you wanted to add?
Yes, we are young. We were 3 co-founders. One is the financial guy, the other is the CEO, and me that are the scientific. So it's like a very well-balanced team. Now we are 10 and we are growing, and we think really that the science and the technology can help or can solve many challenges of the society. So I was like very satisfying to work in this and trying to get a more sustainable world.
So that was our brief look at Spain. I know it's only a very small snapshot because there are literally hundreds of companies there. And I know it's a far distance into the future, but don't forget to put Bio Spain in your calendar for 2023 because it's a big event and it's set to run from September the 26th to the 28th, 2023 in Barcelona. Always a great place to visit. What do we have set up for next week's podcast? Well, I could leave you in suspense, but I'll tell you, the plan at the moment is interviews with Arocena, Unilever and TWB. The interviews amazingly are already done, but you never know what could happen in the meantime, so I'll sit on the fence, so to speak. The next podcast is out on July the 1st, so happy Canada Day in advance. I know it's a little bit early to be planning that trip to Spain for next year, but I do think that I'll go and take a look and see what other events there are that I could be attending in the not too distant future. It's always nice to plan for shows and site visits, especially post-pandemic. So on that note, thanks so much for listening, and I hope wherever you are that you have a great week, and you'll join us again next time for more Beyond Biotech.